too busy for the company?
In a way,
Back
yeah.
to the form.
Yeah, I think you could say it. It's another way of saying it. I was very busy. I considered this the most important job in the world, saving millions of lives. I think you would have had nuclear holocaust if I didn't deal with North Korea. I think you would have had a nuclear war if I weren't elected. And I think you might have a nuclear war now, if you want to know the truth. And now the brand is worth much more. If you look, I mean, I became president because of the brand. Okay? I became president. I think it's the hottest brand in the world. I believe the brand is worth more than all of the properties put together. If you look at Coca-Cola, their brand, I believe, is 90% of their value or something. You know, their trucks and their factories or the rest of it. But if I wanted to show you a good statement, I would have added maybe $10 billion or something for the brand. I didn't put the brand in there. I actually had an appraisal of $2.9 billion. That was a long time ago.
I know you feel the need to explain this, but
I don't want to explain it to you because you don't have a case, and you should drop this case. And it's a shame that somebody that's done such a good job, the convention center in New York, so many things I did for this city, the job on the west side of Manhattan, thousands of people employed, and now I have to come and justify myself to you? I have to come after doing all of that and paid massive taxes, state taxes and city taxes, and now I have to come in here and justify myself and have crowds of people waiting on the street? It's a disgrace.
Well, that was Donald Trump sitting down for his deposition in the New York City fraud case. The woman's voice, actually in that video, was Letitia James, the woman who has been sitting directly behind Donald Trump in the courtroom, the New York Attorney General, who pushed this case through and ultimately found Donald Trump guilty of fraud, which makes that last little remark of, you don't have a case, you should just drop this. So beautiful, because Donald Trump, the case was not dropped. You lost. You were fired from New York, Donald. Fired. And I love it. Now, of course, we got to talk about Donald Trump saying that he was the president who, because he was elected, Kim Jong-un did not drop a nuclear bomb on the United States. Now, before, let's ignore what the United States was going through before with Barack Obama, right? Let's ignore that he was a president for 8 years and Kim Jong-un didn't do a damn thing, right? Let's remember that. Let's also remember that we're getting into the 4th year of Joe Biden's presidency and we don't have a nuclear war. But, almost a year ago, Donald Trump, he was convinced that we were going to be in a nuclear war because Trump wasn't our president. Well, guess what, Don? You're 0 for 2. Case wasn't dropped. We're not in nuclear war. You, my friend, are a complete moron. Donald Trump, he also thinks here that because he built parts of New York City, that he should be above the law. That's essentially what he said in the middle of that video. It goes to the same belief with him in the presidency. Now, he wants total immunity from prosecution because he was the president of the United States. It's President Trump. You can't do this to him. The guy who worked so hard to save the millions of lives that he said, which is a really interesting number because over 1 million people have died from COVID, largely thanks to Donald Trump and how little he worked to protect Americans. People died because he was president. He didn't save lives. He caused death. So Donald Trump here just kind of reminding us how terrible his presidency was. He's kind of talking like a kid here, and I think a lot of people have been talking about how he's in this cognitive decline. But what I think is really happening is that he was never at a peak. He's been at this decline his entire life. I don't think this guy and his brain matured past the age of 18. I mean, what adult thinks that he just is immune from our law and order, from our criminal system, from criminal justice? Who in their right mind, who is an adult, thinks that way? And I think this man does, because I don't think his brain has ever fully developed. So we've got all this, all this talk on social media about how Donald Trump's in cognitive decline. No, man, I don't think Donald Trump was ever in an incline. Really. He's been making gaffes and mistakes for years. He was doing it during his presidency. I mean, yeah, you can go back in interview tapes and watch him, and he may not seem as scatterbrained as he is, but he also wasn't the president. He also didn't have, the eyes of the world watching him before his presidency. Now he does, and I think it just becomes clear that this guy, his brain is still in its infancy, unfortunately. Now, I don't know. Maybe I'm being too hard on him, but I really think that I'm not. So I'm curious to hear what you have to say, what you think about his immunity claims. I mean, because they're just so ridiculous. But also, the idea that he's out here telling his supporters that he was too busy for the company because he was saving millions of lives as president, and yet over 1.1 million Americans have passed away thanks to COVID, thanks to how little he understood the pandemic and what was taking place. So Donald Trump here, of course, just talking to his supporters, right? Trying to remind them that he was just so great, because that's all Donald Trump is holding on to, right? Like, the majority of the world sees him as the con man that he is, but he's still holding on to these like 50, 60 million people who he's just going to lie to, until he drops.